She'll be here in 1 second. Lovely.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Your voice was going very strange then.
Oh, is it still strange?
No, you're fine. You're back to normal.
Lovely, and you sound perfect.
Good.
Lovely. Chris, thank you for joining us tonight. At very short notice. Actually, I don't even know if it's been 24 hours notice, but I appreciate you joining. We'll get into it in a moment. But guys, just to let you know that I met Chris a little while back, saw her on TikTok, and we made contact. I did a podcast with her as well. I've done so many that I forgot so much about who she was and what they were about, and that's my fault, because that's how my brain is, unfortunately. But it was a pleasure to do that podcast. It was you gave me a lot of space to express myself. It's a really good podcast. So what I'll do is let you introduce yourself, what you do, about your podcast, and anything social media, and then we'll get into the topic.
Okay, no worries. So I'm Chris. I am a survivor of all forms of abuse and neglect as a child and young person, and I've been impacted by the trauma of that abuse for most of my adult life, and I understood the impact on my mental and my physical health when I had a breakdown after I had my first child back in 1998, but my mental health took a slide for about 2 years, but I didn't know that's what it was. And when I was literally on my knees, I then understood that something else was going on for me, and I needed to look into changing not only my career, but also really look at my health and how could I recover from trauma in a healthier way. At that time, I was working at a private, well-known psychiatric hospital, and as a business manager, as an accountant. And I started speaking to some of the inpatients at the hospital because I was introducing a therapy fitness service into the hospital as a result of my ongoing recovery journey, which I was keeping separate to my professional life. That was all going on in the background in my personal life. And I started speaking to other people about why they were inpatients within the hospital. And they would tell me, oh, it's I got addicted to drugs, or I alcohol, or I self-harm, or I am anorexic or bulimic. And I'm like, wow, I can identify with some of these things that they're saying. And I'm like, but what caused that? And they're like, oh, well, this happened in my life, that happened in my life. Everyone I spoke to had an adverse childhood experience, 1, 2, 3, 4, even higher. And it was just like a light bulb going off. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, but why is it that I'm okay-ish and they're in hospital? Why am I not in hospital? What is the difference? And I started going on that journey. There was no judgment, but it was just like, it really intrigued me as to what was the difference. And cut a long story short, since 2003, when I changed careers from an accountancy to health and wellness, I've been on this recovery journey. And I don't know if you see, but I've got some books that I've written up there. And I now raise awareness of the impact of adverse childhood experiences on mental and physical health. I, as you know, do a podcast with Beverly Ann to bring awareness around child sexual abuse and exploitation, its impact in all areas of victim and survivor's life. And I was part of the VSEP on the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse for 8 years. So I've got not only operational level experience, but I've got strategic level experience, and I lobby the government to make sure that they're going to implement these ICSA recommendations, which will bring about a cultural change so that children and young people are better protected from abuse in the first place, but the response to them is different to what they're getting now. Sorry, Curtis.
No, not at all. What's the name of the podcast?
Breaking the Cycle, 2 Step Forwards. So Bev and I merged our business names. Mine was Breaking the Cycle. That's my program that I created. Hers was Two Step Forwards. And when we went away for a weekend to do some brainstorming, I went, let's just merge our businesses, because Breaking the Cycle, Two Step Forwards is just, it's magic.
Mm,
Because you have to break the cycle, whatever cycle it is, two step forwards in your life and into your light.
mm, loving it. Okay, so look, you've gone straight for the jugular. You didn't even, there was no warm up. It was straight into fifth gear.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No,
I don't.
no, no,
It's my
no, no,
reality, so I
no,
don't.
no, no. You don't even need to apologize. I like that because it means I can dive in. I move at the speed of the guest. But if you're going at that speed, I'm going to join you. I just want to say that your podcast is very insightful. And for those of you who are, this is it, social work series. I don't know if you can see the comments.
Yeah,
We
I can,
love
yeah.
reality. So this is it, guys. This is what we're going to get, reality. And I am fortunate to come across so many great people. There's another listener here who's due to come on this podcast soon, who is someone with lived experience, a care leaver,
Okay.
similar to yourself, Chris. But I really want to say that I can see you pushing quite hard. I only see you on TikTok, to be honest, because
I'm across all social platforms, yeah, pushing everywhere.
Excellent. We're going to get all those details in a little while. But I saw your most recent post, and this is where we start, guys. Just to remind you, Chris, we are talking to mostly social work students,
Yeah.
and social workers, and anyone else who's interested. Today, we are talking about the impact of sexual abuse against children and young people.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting over a cold. You put out a post recently that was talking about some of the misconceptions of it.
Yeah.
I want to go into that because what's interesting, guys, if you are practicing in social services or if you're on the front line in any way, some of the symptoms that we see on our children in some of their behavior is because of an unspoken history. And so, Chris, really, I called you straight away and I'm like, can we do this live? Because you articulate it in an excellent way. Where do you want to start with this? Because this is a sensitive topic. And just before you go into it, I always have a conversation with guests on sensitive issues.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because it's your story. I said to you, do you mind talking about your story? And you said, not at all. So where do you want to start? And I'll follow you in.
I don't want to bore everybody. I feel like I just speak about my story all of the time. Basically, I was with my mum and dad until I was 7 years old. So I'll give you a synopsis of what's gone on, and then anyone can ask any questions they want, because that's what we're here for, a learning experience. So I was with mum and dad till I was 7 years old. I then was with my dad and my stepmum from the age of 7 to the age of 11.
Yep.
In that 4-year period, so my mum and dad were in a domestic violence relationship. Mum got out, but she couldn't take children with her because there was no refugees around at the time. It's 1977, and she didn't have any money. So she was going away, get a job, and then she was going to come back for us. So dad had us, but he got with a woman 4 doors down who had 7 daughters. Okay, it's all in the book. All right, I haven't made it up.
It doesn't sound real.
All right, it doesn't sound real. You haven't heard anything yet. So I was living with stepmom and dad from 7 to 11. In that 4 years, I was sexually assaulted by someone outside the family home when I was 9. Dad then got arrested for sexually assaulting some of the stepsisters within the family and one of my siblings. So he got put away in 1981 when I was 11. Mum got custody of us when I was 11, and I went to live with her along with my 3 siblings between 11 and 15. And then I left home at 15 and made my own life. Okay. So let's go back to stepmum and dad though. In that 4 years, there was domestic violence, there was mental abuse, physical abuse, there was starvation. We were known to social service, we were known to the police, we were known to the school. So we were literally the family that everybody looked at like in disgust, because we smell, we look bad, and we just was not cared for. Yeah. And we lived in a very, very, what I would consider a nice area, like Bromley Borough, yeah, which is a nice area. But we were the kids that everybody stayed away from. So there was bullying at school as well because of what we looked like and what we smelt like. So there was this general air of neglect. So Dad got put away in prison, and that's when social services got us into the custody of my mum. So Mum had gone through the family courts as well to get access to us, and we used to go to hers for weekends sometimes. And then whilst it was all going through the family courts, we were still living with stepmum, and Dad was in prison. So when Dad went into prison, stepmum upped her abuse of us, and it was just a horrible time. So when we went to live with Mum, and she was with this new fella, they'd married and they'd got a kid, another youngster, my stepsister, or my half sister, because she is blood. We felt that we'd landed in a lap of luxury almost because of where we've come from. But we didn't realise that we'd gone from the frying pan into the fire. He was an alcoholic. They were in a domestic violence relationship. So this is now the third domestic violence relationship household that we've been brought up in. There was mental abuse, there was physical abuse, there was sexual abuse. And my brother left home when he was 15. I left home when I was 15, literally a few months shy of our 16th birthday, because we'd done all of the running away, but the police would just bring us back. So we knew the law by then. We knew that once you turned 16, they couldn't bring you back. Yeah. Because legally you can be on your own at 16. So 3 months before, we all left home. So when I left home, I helped my sister leave home, and then the next one, and then the next one, because there was 6 of us, and I was the second eldest girl. So that's the synopsis of the dysfunction and the chaos and the abuse from 0 to 16.
Let's talk about your current family situation.
Yep.
In terms of your immediate nuclear family.
So right now, with my husband, so I've got a husband who's just retired from the police after 30 years. So we got together when I was 15, and I'm now 53. He's 53. So we've been together a long, long time, nearly 40 years. We've had our ups and downs like all relationships. And you can imagine with the trauma, it's been quite hard for him to deal with me. But, you know, we're still here and it's good. And I've got a 26-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. And both doing very well. And we've tried to break the cycle. There has been some of my impact that has come up, but I've tried to deal with it in a way that's been very responsible. And I say that not to be judgmental to other people that can't maybe tackle life so well, but I knew that I had to do things differently. And I knew that I would never, ever bring my children up the way that I was brought up. And I knew that I would need a roof over my head, money in the bank, and be married before I even brought a child into this world. I made that clear, conscious decision at the age of 16. Whereas all my siblings were having children at 17, 18, early 20s, I didn't have my first child until I was 28. Because it was important, again, not judging them, but it was important to me that I had all of the foundations right in my head before any child of mine came into the world, because I wanted to love it, nurture it, and give it as much as I could without spoiling it. I say it, the child, okay? I just wanted to do everything right by what didn't go right by me. And Curtis, the minute I held my son in my arms, that is when I started the breakdown, because it hit me that I would kill for my child, literally, right? And I mean this. If any harm came to my child, you would not get away with harming my child, right? But then why didn't the 4 caregivers that I had in my life care for me? And that was the beginning of my breakdown. And
what do you mean by breakdown?
Couldn't function. So I literally had a breakdown at work. So I'm a chartered management accountant. Okay, I've got that qualification. It took me 10 years of failing and then getting back up and resitting, and I paid for it all myself. In the middle of the office one day, with trauma, your stress bucket gets so full, and then all of a sudden that final little bit just tips you over the edge. Okay, this is how big trauma and little trauma works. You can get away with dealing with the little bits of trauma and the stress, but when you've got big rock trauma sitting in your background, and then you've got all of this additional trauma happening, some way, someday, you're not going to function. You're literally, your body's just going to go and your brain's going to go, no more, can't cope. Yeah. I literally was in front of a screen at work doing these spreadsheets on balance sheets, profit and losses, cash flow, and all the rest of it. The stress was building, and I also had at the time some issues with my childcare. So I felt like a shit mum that was at work all the time because I was earning the money to keep a roof over our heads. And I felt like I was just sticking my child in a nursery and not being a good mum. And then at work, I was being told, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. I was being bullied at work as well. And my brain just went, you know what, I've had enough. But the way that it manifested for me is that the numbers were jumping out of the spreadsheet and chased me out into the office, and I screamed my head off. Yeah. So that is obviously not normal. That is a complete shutdown of everything. Yeah. I then went for my first lot of counselling, I would say, and I'm just like, I don't know what happened. I just know I can't cope. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what is going wrong, why it's going wrong. And then I just had one professional that turned around and said to me, because I shared some other stuff with this GP, and said to me, he said, you know what you've gone through as a child and young person and what you're now dealing with, it's no wonder you're at the place that you're at the moment. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't understand. So I'm always questioning, always wanting to know what I can do differently. And he said, well, you know, your body and your brain, you've just had no let up. All you've done is go, 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 be productive, be the best this, be the best that. You're critical of yourself. You've done all of this, and you can only take, as a human being, you can only take so much. Yeah. And one day I was cleaning my son. He done, you know, babies do these really mucky, yucky nappies. Yeah. They literally, little person's done this poo that's all gone up their backs. Yeah. I put him in the bath. I'm washing him, cleaning him down. And then all of a sudden a thought popped into my head. You're spending too long cleaning him. Are you abusing him? It just popped into my head because I was taking too long cleaning him, yeah, and I felt uncomfortable touching his genitals, even though I needed to clean him, yeah. And I immediately called my husband up and I said, "You need to take over. I can't do this anymore." And it might sound to your listeners that this is a one-off or not normal, but there are a lot of mums who are survivors and dads who are survivors who go through this as well. Yeah, they don't want to touch their children because of the misconceptions around if you've been abused, you're going to go on to be an abuser, which is an absolute shocking myth that is out there, right? But you get to hear it and you sort of like somehow it popped up in my head and I'm like, no, I wasn't. I was just cleaning him. I'm a good mum, right? So I went to the doctor and I shared with him exactly that, what happened. And I said, please tell me I'm okay. And he just went, have you been abused when you was a child? And I went, yeah. And then I told him and he went, normal thoughts, don't worry about it, but we'll get you some therapy. So then they referred me to the 6 sessions of therapy, which didn't do no good at all at the time. But because I just spent those 6 sessions crying, and I've never cried before because that was a weakness and I used to get punished for crying. Okay. So it almost got beaten out of me that I could show my emotions. All right. So those 6 sessions of where I was able to cry probably did my body a lot of good, because I don't know if you know, Professor Van der Kolk wrote a book called Body Keeps the Score. Okay. This is all trauma.
Yeah.
Body keeps the score. So when you start looking at trauma and child sexual abuse, exploitation and bullying and all of that impact that's held on by the body, it just makes complete sense. All right. You can, with hindsight, everything makes sense. So I then, when I knew that what I was thinking and feeling was normal, I could breathe. I was told I was a good mum. I could breathe. Yeah. I knew I was a good mum deep down. I knew I wasn't like those caregivers that abused me and my siblings all our lives. But at the same time, when you're conditioned to think a certain way, and you're trying to fight that, and then you've got all of these thoughts and feelings coming up, to be told that it's normal, it's just such a relief. And then being able to speak about it now just openly and honestly, and I've got nothing to be ashamed of, I've got nothing to be worried about. And when I share it, things like this on our podcast, and the amount of people that come back to us and say, oh my God, I thought that, I did that, I did this. And I just, and the layers of shame and guilt that you've already got because you've gone through child sexual abuse, you've already got those layers. You don't need these other judgments going on. Yeah. You need someone to listen, understand and unpick it all for you, help you unpick it and move you on. All right. So I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought yet now. I don't know
Right.
where I am.
Let me get you on this. It's all right. I mean,
Yeah.
give us maybe say your top 3 misconceptions about sexual abuse.
So if you've been abused, you're going to become an abuser. That's, I can't get that out of professionals' heads. The fact is, if you are an abuser, you have often been abused. That is completely different to if you've been abused, you're going to go on to be an abuser. Completely different, okay? If you look at the prevalence of child sexual abuse just in its on its own feet, at least 1 in 3 children have suffered child sexual abuse, yeah? And it all depends what website you go to and what stats they've got as to what it is you're going to believe, but it's 1 in 6 boys, 1 in 4 girls. That's one set of stats. The child sexual abuse inquiry said that it was 1 in 12, I think. But again, the CSA Centre, Child Sexual Abuse Centre for Expertise, says at least 500,000 children a year undergo sexual abuse. So it just, no one knows the true prevalence, all right? But whatever way you look at it, if you think about 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, it's 25% of every class. So in every class of 30 children, you've got at least 2 to 3 children minimum in each class that are going through child sexual abuse. And that is the prevalence, yeah?
Can I,
so the child, yeah,
can I,
sorry.
I mean, I was looking at this the other day, just out of interest. 85% of the perpetrators are men,
Yeah,
and about 85% of the victims are females,
yeah,
children. Yet females only account for about 15% of the perpetrator rate. So that just adds to the notion, to the fact that abusers don't necessarily abuse. In fact, they generally don't.
no,
But
we know what it feels like.
it does happen, but it's not a
Yeah,
correlation.
no, yeah,
Go ahead.
it certainly does happen, but there is no correlation. So the Children's Commissioner back in 2015 did a review or an inquiry into intrafamilial child sexual abuse. So child sexual abuse within the family environment, yeah?
Yeah.
And her conclusion was only 1 in 8 children are known to the authorities. So bearing in mind your social workers, you guys only know about 1 in 8 children. So there's an endemic epidemic within our society of children that are not known. So if those children are not known about, how can we give them and get early interventions to them that they're going to need to change the trajectory of their life.
Okay, pause there. Misconceptions.
Oh, two more. Okay. I did about 40. They're all on my website. The perpetrators are old men in black max. Stranger danger. Perpetrators can be anybody and everybody.
In fact, let's go in a little bit. I've been dealing with this for a while. So much. Sometimes TikTok does inhibit some of my posts because of the words that I say. So I'm trying to get around it. I know there's ways that we can deal with it, but it's a massive issue because I think someone actually commented, I'm going to do a video on it on one of my posts. This stranger danger thing is not even worth looking at so much.
No, it's not.
It's the people that we know.
People we know, 100%.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and in the work that I do and what I've seen and what I've researched over the years, as when it goes back to perpetrators, as I said, there is no one that is not a perpetrator. You come from all socioeconomic groups, all ethnicities, all cultures, all faiths, you know, it's right across the board.
Would you say that church leaders or religious leaders are any less potential for this?
No, absolutely not. Where there's power and control, there's abuse.
So this is it. Sorry, I know I'm cutting you because I want to get
fine.
a lot. So this is probably point number 3 then, right? You might have more. It's the vast majority of men, sadly, are perpetrators. So it's like it's a sexual thing for them to want to do this to children and young people. You just mentioned control.
It's power and control. So for some it will be just a straightforward sexual act. At the end of the day, why not have that sexual act with an adult, a consenting adult? Why are you having thoughts, feelings and taking acts out on children? It's because of the power and control dynamic. You can silence them, and you often groom, not you, the perpetrator, often grooms the people around the child so that if the child did speak up, the child wouldn't be believed. Because why would you believe the child over the faith leader, for example, or the child over the police person, for example, or the child over a school teacher? You know, there's a lot of, we should listen to children and young people. There's a lot of that going on amongst professionals, and I am a professional person myself that acts in this space, but we don't truly listen to them and we don't believe them, because if we did, we will be cutting this prevalence down. Go on. I know.
Of worms.
And I'm not saying all professionals, of course I'm not. I'm just saying generally. So if you get victim and survivors, adult victim survivors around a table, and you ask them, how was you failed as a child and young person? It's, I wasn't believed. I was told I was making up lies. I was told personally that I had an overactive imagination. Like,
well, okay, so this is it. I wasn't actually thinking about the professional element, but let's look at what you just said. Social work has changed a lot since your time. Saying that, I'm going to say, and I'm going to come to your questions, guys. I'm going to say that some of the things that I've come across have only been exposed because I asked more and more questions. And some of the things that, and it's so simple, the method is keep asking why.
100%.
Keep asking when. How. These questions will lead you a lot of the time to the truth. If you're afraid of upsetting people, if you're afraid of treading on people's toes,
don't be. Yeah. So it's that professional curiosity, isn't it? It's just the constant, you know, something don't feel right here, something don't smell right, something don't look right, yeah. And just, I don't know, whatever position you've got in a child's life, it's not just about professionals, it's about other people around that child within their life, within their network. If something don't look right, smell right, yeah, have the balls to literally ask the questions, because you could literally save that child or young person's life, literally save their life, or you can save them from a lifetime of impact.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. I've and social workers will be hated, or professionals involved will be hated, because
Yeah.
that digging in upsets people. They will feel judged.
100%. Yeah.
But I've worked on a couple of cases where I've unraveled lies on the part of the parent,
Yeah.
family, friend, asking questions. They're getting upset, swearing at me, hanging up. I'm like, I'm not letting this go.
Yeah.
Because not have that child later on say, Curtis failed me.
Yeah. 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 I've spoken about social workers before, and this is not to judge. This is just to open their eyes to what
Go for it.
what can help. So I know he's moved on, but I also know younger people than me, 20s, 30s, that have also been fouled by the system, whether it be social workers, police, or their schools, whatever. They've been fouled from their personal perspective. Okay. It's, for me, it was, my stepmom always knew when the social services were coming round. So she'd put us in clean clothes, she would put a meal on the table, and she would say to us before they came, if you say anything other than nod and smile, you will be getting into trouble when they've gone. Okay. That was it.
Yeah.
So we would have the social services arrive, and we would literally sit there on our hands, not saying a word. But when it came for my mum getting custody, my dad had gone off to prison, and we were in a homeless unit in Penge, they come round and they took us out from her, watching us, into this little park, and sat us down, and they said, so can you tell us what's going on for you? And I told them, yeah. Bearing in mind, I knew that there was going to be repercussions. I was brave to open up, right? Really brave. And I told social services, this is all a sham. As soon as you've gone, we have to get out of these clothes. That meal she's put on the table is going to be removed. We won't be allowed to eat it. All right. And then they literally went back and told my stepmom what I'd said.
So what, they didn't believe you?
Didn't believe me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a one-off. I've heard so many people say, like, yeah. And also for me, in our case, when we got put back with mum, and they all thought that obviously my mum was going to offer us a stable home because she'd remarried, and this bloke was upstanding, and, you know, they had another child and there was no issues, and they were literally saving 4 children from this other dysfunction, abusive house, and they were putting us with, you know, stability, security, and all the rest of it. They then just left us. We've sorted you out, and they went. They didn't come back and check to see if everything was okay. And I can, as an adult, I can get that. I can rationalise that. But as a child, it literally, as soon as the social services had left, the abuse started all over again in a different way.
You know what? We still don't do that.
I'm just saying. And I'm telling you, this is some learning right here, right now. When you are vulnerable because you've been abused and you've not been believed, I've got paperwork literally here. See those files up there? I've got them in front of me. Case files notes, everything that I've got back from going through the criminal justice system for 5 years, and in it clearly shows the abuse that's happened after social services walked away, thinking that they'd done a good job.
So,
and it's even got it in black and white that my stepdad turned around and said, well, they won't believe my sister because she made up a lot of lies before, and they didn't believe her then, they're not going to believe her now.
so the law needs to be adjusted to allow us to make statutory calls to families after we've closed the case.
There's a lot of reoffending that goes on just because of the vulnerability of the child, young person. Not always, of course, I'm not saying that it's going to happen in every household, but you'll find that a lot of abuse will carry on. So even if it's a care leaver who's been fostered out or you know, rehomed, adopted, there's cases of where the abuse is carried on for them as well.
You see, I'm not allowed to go back into someone's home after we've closed the case. I can only deal with cases that are open.
And there's enough of them, isn't there? Let's be honest.
Well, there definitely is not enough social workers to all cases. It is just not going to happen.
No.
But that is a dilemma.
It is because there was more abuse happen in that second stable, secure home than what there was from what we got taken away from.
I remember I had a case where a mum was abusing one of her two daughters. Culture had a lot to play with it in that. And I met the daughter the first time and she was like, oh, it wasn't really that bad, kind of thing. The second daughter I spoke to, she was like, no, things are perfect. And then the second time I met the first daughter who was assaulted, she broke down in tears and said, my mum has been beating me for ages.
Yeah.
She told us how to behave.
100%.
And when I spoke to the mum, you would not think.
No.
She was so gentle. She was so well. She was so well put together. The home was well put together. Dad was away a lot, and I said I had to bring it up to the mum eventually because we can't not say it. But the dilemma was that there wasn't enough threshold for us more than just work with the family.
Yeah.
But even when I told mum that I knew, mum still put a lot of pressure on the daughter. But the daughter did say, thankfully, I realized how powerless I was. Thankfully, the daughter said, it stopped now. Leave her. But I'm worried about what happens when I make disclosures to the family to say, little one has said X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And when I walk away, they're going to learn how to cover their tracks even better.
They do. They do. Yeah. That's been my learning and my experience.
Okay.
So I don't know what you do in that situation because obviously that's not the reality for every family, because you'll often get a non-offending parent who does stand up for their children and will take the right actions. But then you'll also get people like my mum, who's now dead, who's gone through her own trauma, then stands by and watches her partners perpetrate abuse, and then she's also complicit in some of the abuse herself and covers it up and sticks up for the husband and not the children. And there's a lot of that, you know, and it's just really sad.
There is, and just to let everyone look, if you're a student social worker or newly qualified,
yeah, we don't want to scare you.
But we have always been about being honest on this platform, and you will get a case where that is happening. It happens more than I could have imagined before I started in social work. But what I want to do is just read some of the comments. We've got an hour and then it'll cut off, and then if we're still going, we'll have to start again in the after. Okay, someone's giving you a round of applause for something there. Someone says here, this is when you was talking about what you went through earlier on. You look great. and then that's to you, by the way, not me. And then someone saying impressive. Let's go to some of these questions. And if you can be even more concise, because there's so much to ask and answer here. What Dulcie said, can I ask what type of therapy you had?
So it was just the 6 weeks that's offered via statutory services. It was then
Life, in terms of
sorry,
any therapy, any in your whole life?
yeah, I've had loads.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so there's been lots of private therapy that I've paid for myself, and the recent therapy that I had ended in February 23, and I had a year of EMDR. That's proper trauma therapy, because there was such a lot of anger that was repressed that I needed to deal with, because it was impacting my mental and my physical health. So you'll find that victim and survivors that get silenced, they will either explode, take it out on other people, verbally, physically, or they will implode and they will take it out on themselves in some form. Addictions, alcohol, drugs, self-harm, anorexia, bulimia. I was bulimic for years. So that's how I see it. Explode or implode, or you might do both. I was more of an imploder. I did explode 2 or 3 times throughout my life, but then I realised that I didn't do anger, I didn't do violence. I hated it because I've experienced too much of it. I didn't want to be a product of that. So I knew that I needed to deal with how I was feeling. I didn't know it was anger. I didn't know it was anger management that I needed. I just knew that I was exploding at everything and it wasn't normal, and what was causing it. Yeah. So I'm always, right, there's the symptoms or behaviour. What's the causal reason, and how do we sort out the causal reason? Because if we can sort out the causal reason, then we can sort out the behaviour patterns, and we can sort out the habits.
Right. Okay. Next question. Shania Ray is asking, how did you overcome trusting others with your child, for example, in daycare?
I didn't. So they were highly vetted.
Right.
We paid over the odds for childcare. And I literally would probably phone them every day to make sure everything was okay. Yeah. They were told my husband was a police officer, just in case, just drop that in. But the guilt that I had of being a working mum and putting him in nursery all of that time was horrific. But my kids never did sleepovers until they were a lot older, and I knew the parents. But even then, I would randomly just go and knock on the door and say, "Is everything okay? Can I just check in with Charlie, see if she's all right?" For example. Yeah, they're. So it's things like that, because there's a lack of trust, because there is, the dangers potentially. There is a lot of, I don't really want you to do that at this moment in time when you're a little bit older. So I put it off as much as I could, and I would often invite their children around our home rather than the other way round. Yeah. So that was my impacting my kids' lives, because they didn't get the freedom that other children was perceived to have. But I'm sorry, I had to keep my kids safe.
I mean, this is a tough one. I've got 3. I remember the nursery days.
Yeah.
And there are people that were friends, long-standing friends, older than us, similar age. And my wife and I would just look and just say, I just don't trust that person.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the price that we have to pay. The children cannot live in a perfect world. And if we take our eyes off the ball, that's all it takes. We've got too many friends who will tell us, this happened to me.
Yeah.
Must not.
Yeah.
Children.
And
go on.
You know what, Curtis? Perpetrators are looking for that vulnerable situation. So mum's rushed off her feet, dad's out working.
Yeah.
I'll step in. Oh, can I babysit? Can I help? Can I just drop your child here? Can I just do this? Can I just do that? Now, I'm not saying that everybody in your network needs to be checked out because they're going to be a potential offender. I'm not saying that, but you have to have your eyes and your ears open to that thing that might happen, because that is where it usually does happen, when you're not looking and listening.
Okay. All right. We've got 15 minutes. I think we can get this done.
Okay.
All right. I'm a bit like a movie director here.
You go ahead, because my head's all over the place, so I'm just answering your questions.
What we're looking at with some of our young people, social workers, as frontline workers, is, oh gosh, come on, get rid. Is we're seeing behaviours that look like bad behaviour.
Yeah.
Whereas that behaviour could be pointing to something else. Do you
100%.
want to talk to us for a minute about that?
I personally feel that a child doesn't want to behave badly, but they're doing it for a reason. Whether that is because that is the only way they know to get your attention, I don't know. So you need to change that around. So you only praise them for when they're good, rather than, ignoring them when they're good, and then only chastising them or showing them a little bit of interest when they're being bad. So that's what they're learning. They're learning they have to be bad in order to get your attention. So we need to be parents. We need to step up and be parents, is my number one. But if they've gone from being a quiet child, for example, to starting acting out, or if they was a very outgoing child and then they've all of a sudden become quiet, if something's changed for them, why? Yeah. So when my child was being bullied at school, I knew straight away, because I'm always checking in with them every day, just how's your day been? What you been up to? Who you've been hanging out with? Is there anything you need to tell me? Just generally, they grew up with that kind of, not interrogation, but just knowing that someone cared for them, loved them, and was going to be there for them. Yeah. So that was the culture environment that I brought my kids up with. So I knew straight away that something wasn't right. The fact that I couldn't protect my daughter from what happened to her brought up a lot of stuff for me. And my daughter is still dealing with what happened at school, and still living with the impact and still dealing with it, because the professionals did not act as they should have done.
What should they have done?
They should have stopped the bullying and not saying it's boys being boys. She's a bit sensitive, victim blaming. Have you got any evidence? Well, I don't work in your school, you do, so how about you care for the students who say they're being bullied? Yeah. So when I did bring them evidence, when I did bring them my child who was highly traumatized, didn't want to go into school, was having panic attacks at the school gate, took her in and said, right, this can't carry on. What are you going to do about it? This woman turned around and said to me, or my daughter, whatever is wrong? And I said, who are you? And she goes, I'm the school counsellor Charlie's been seeing. And I went, oh, right. So you know all about the bullying and the other stuff that's gone on. And she went, what bullying? What other stuff? And I said, well, exactly what are you seeing my daughter for? And she said, oh, because she's just not settling into school and she's got a little bit of anxiety. I went, right, really? And that's when I went to town with the school headmaster, parent governors, the lots. I got their safeguarding policy, I got their bullying policy, I got everything, and I took them to town. And I literally said, unless you communicate across the board to all of her teachers and tell them what's going on, how can you protect her? How can you prevent the bullying? And if the bloody counsellor doesn't know what she's going through, how is she getting the help and support that she needs? So they've put protection of their reputation before protection of the children. And this school, local school, very good school, good Ofsted, outstanding, whatever it's got, but there's still bullying going on. I hear about it all the time. But then every school has got a bullying situation within it, yeah? But they don't want to talk about it because it's their reputation, okay? And this is what I find really frustrating about all organisations, especially where child sexual abuse has happened within an institution and it's been proven or there's been concerns. They will all batten down the hatches and protect themselves rather than going, you know what, we've got a problem and we need to deal with it. So for me, a school that's got a bullying problem that owns up to it and is actively working on it, I'd rather my kid go there than a school that says it hasn't got a bullying problem, because they're lying.
And that's a topic that I've always said about. I said it recently about religious institutions.
That's the same.
There's a lady that's on here I did a podcast with a few weeks ago, and I made out the strong point that religious institutions will seek to, especially the ones where family are serving on the church board or whatnot, or if there's a lots of very close friends,
Yeah.
they will seek to protect the
Mm-hmm.
of the children. These are functional, very nice,
Mm-hmm.
professional or non-professional people
Yep.
in families and friendship groups. They will try to protect themselves
100%.
first.
Yep.
Now, I'm not going to say all, and I know you're not Chris for PM. I'm
No
not.
thanks.
I'm not. I'm not saying that all schools and churches are doing that, but we have to assume that is going to be the position. This is why we have to forsake all hierarchy and position and put the child first. Therefore, in some capacity, we have to consider the child is telling the truth until proven otherwise.
100%.
Innocent.
And then if they are lying, which is a small amount of cases, why are they lying? They need help anyway. Yeah?
Right.
So I'm not saying that we should let children get away with bad behaviour for nothing. I'm not saying that. But what we need is a system of boundaries and consequence, which doesn't mean smacking, whacking, abusing, belittling. It don't mean that. Discipline, the word means teach. So if we're going to teach our children to be upstanding members of society, then we need to be present as parents and teach them. It don't mean break them. It doesn't mean disrespect them. It doesn't mean belittle them to a point where they can't function. It doesn't mean any of that. Yeah.
Chris, this is what I'm thinking, right? You just come back for about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Because it's going to cut out before, and I'm thinking we're going to get into it, and we're like, no, we've got enough time. What I want to do is come back in. I want you to speak to victims about how they're going to get through, because I have no doubt, and this is my assumption, that there are people who are victims that are listening right now.
Yeah, there will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many
but
professionals have gone into their professional life because of what they've gone through. So, you know.
So this is it. Chris, I'm going to give you the floor in a minute. Guys, I'm going to start this live again in literally about 20 seconds. See you in a sec. Thank you, Chris. Lovely. We're back.
Hello.
All right, Chris. So I want you to, however you feel, but speak to, firstly, people who are victims. And I want you to show them the way out.
Very personal, that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and it will be inspiring. But also, I want you to speak to us as professionals
Mm-hmm.
and how we're going to view, manage, support allegations and disclosures.
You might have to ask me that one again, all right?
Don't
Because my
worry.
brain's going to go all over the place.
Fine. Speak
Um,
to the victims.
yeah. So first of all, know what abuse is and what it isn't. Acknowledge what you've gone through is potentially abuse. Understand the impact that may be having on your everyday life, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health. How do you show up in your own life? How do you function in relationships, whether it be another other half or friends or working relationships? Do you feel joy in life, or is life literally getting through treacle? So you've got to understand that if you're suffering from symptoms that are negatively impacting your health, what is causing that? Now, when I teach my 8-week course, that's where I start with my individuals that have gone through abuse, because they often want to minimize what they've gone through, because when they hear about someone else's experiences, they are so horrendous that they then minimize what they've gone through themselves.
Yeah.
But someone could have gone through multiple assaults, rapes, for example, and someone might have gone through one incident of abuse, yet it has a different impact on both of them, and it could have more of a catastrophizing impact on the one that hasn't gone through as much abuse. So we can't compare abuses. There's no hierarchy of abuse. So if I'm talking to victim and survivors out there, it's, have you been through abuse? Acknowledge it, notice the impact, and then what is it you need? What can you give to yourself? And then what else do you need from outside? So what other help and support do you need? How is the impact showing up in your life? So for me, for many years, it was overworking, no joy in life, perfectionism, bulimia, over-exercising, and all of that. Yeah. And then it was trying to be the perfect mum, perfect housekeeper, perfect boss, and all of that. And that didn't work. I had that breakdown. And then it was actually understanding that the symptoms that I was living with, only I could change that. But how was I going to change that? And it wasn't an easy journey. It was a learning journey, and still ongoing learning journey. I'd like to think that one day I'll be fully healed, but I know for a fact that is just never going to happen. There's always going to be impact. However, I am living my life to the full because I'm choosing to do this work. If I really wanted to be 100% healed, I would go away from this work, leave it all behind and go, you know what, I've done my bit. But I choose to be here because I know I can have these authentic conversations that will help inform and give insight and change things for other people. And that in itself is my reward. Does that make sense? Yeah. So how do other people get to where I am? They don't. We're all on our own individual journey, but what they can do is reach out to the GP first, because they're the gateway to all other services. And don't really look, you can try the talking therapies, you can try cat therapy, you can try CBT, but often if you've gone through a traumatic experience because of abuse, especially sexual abuse, sexual violence, you need trauma therapy, so it's specialist therapy. So if you know that's what you need, then that is what you go and ask for. You're going to be put on a waiting list, you're going to be told about everything else, but trauma therapy is what you need to start working your way through all of this stuff, in order for you to live to your full potential. And as I said, I started therapy when I was in my early 20s, and I was still having it up until I was 52. So I would dip in and out, Curtis. I wasn't in it all the time. Some people are. Some people just can't function. Yeah.
Yeah.
No judgment, but they just can't function. It has such an impact on their life. They just can't function. But others like myself, you know, we are able to, and we dip in and out as and when we feel we need it, because we have to. They, like you, social workers, and police officers and all the different people have supervision where you can speak to someone about what's going on. We haven't had that, but we also need that. We need to be validated. We need to be told we're normal. We need to be told that the experience we've gone through are abnormal, and what we are experiencing is normal because of the abnormal experiences we've experienced. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
So how do they get out of it? Just know yourself that things aren't right, and you have power and control over yourself as an adult, and you can go and reach out and get that help. It might take time, you might need to work around it, but it is out there to access if you are really wanting it. There's peer-to-peer support groups that you can access. There's loads now out there, and you can try different things. But everyone I know that's gone through a kind of recovery program, it is trauma therapy at some stage. Everyone gets to that point because it's just specialist therapy that you don't get from other therapies.
Is there a particular therapy that you recommend?
No, it's going to be different for everybody. It really is. It's their own personal journey. But that deep-seated anger that I had, only EMDR sorted it out. EMDR. Eye desensitization movement therapy. Yeah, that's trauma therapy. And the thing is, I always say as well that asking for help and support is a strength, not a weakness. And if anyone ever says, oh, she's been in therapy, that means she's mentally, weak, I'm like, on your bike, do you know the job I do? Do you know what I do every day? Do you know what I get up and do for you and your kids and the future generation? I ain't weak, I'm strong, okay? And anybody in this area that's trying to improve themselves and help other people, you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm in therapy because I need it to get me through because of the work that I do, full stop. But I'm not in therapy at the moment anyway. But if I needed it, I wouldn't hesitate to go back if I needed it.
Okay. And my last question,
Mm-hmm.
which answers not bad. No, who was it? Oh. Okay, I think we're going to answer it with this question. You can critique, you can speak to, you can offer tips and advice to social workers. We came here to learn.
Yeah.
That's the point of the platform. What would you like to say to social workers and frontline workers?
Don't have the wool pulled over your eyes. Be professionally curious, so keep asking those questions. Listen to what is being said and watch for the non-verbal cues, right? So I couldn't look an adult in the eyes as a child and young person. I just couldn't, because my stepmom used to stand in front of us, demand that we look her in the eyes, and when we did, she'd hit us and say, who are you looking at? Okay, so take that on board for a minute. So when then an adult, a teacher, look at me, pay attention. I ain't looking at you. I'm not paying attention, because you're going to hit me, aren't you? Yeah. And it only came to me when I was an adult. I was working at the psychiatric hospital as the business manager. So I had a senior management position, and the hotel hospital director looked at me and she said, Chris, look at me for a minute. And I looked at her and she goes, you don't like looking people in the eye, do you? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, but you never hold eye contact. And she said, and that shows, eye contact shows that you're assertive, shows that you're listening, shows that you're respectful, right? I left that room and she goes, is anything bothering you? Is anything ever happened? Again, another insightful person. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, and she's noticed a few other things. And she said, abuse, and burst into tears. And I went, and I then went back in my memory as to what may have caused it. And it is that what my stepmom did that caused me not to be able to look people in the eye, to feel worthy, and not expect to be abused. So all of this time in my professional life, when I couldn't look people in the eye, I was being cast as disrespectful. And even crossing your arms, you're told you're not allowed to cross your arms because that shows that, you know, you're antagonistic or whatever. For me, that is protection. Okay. So even as a kid, I would stand there, hug, protect myself, and look down. So look out for the non-verbal cues. So I couldn't talk to a social worker. I was told I wasn't able to. I wasn't allowed to. Yeah. So what is going on? What are you being told that you're not picking up on? I've got lots of little stories like this, Curtis, that I could share, but they don't often come to me until we get there, if you know what I mean.
Well, we've got more opportunities coming up. Could you tell us about those books behind you?
Yeah. So Through the Eyes of a Child, that pink one. So these are all available on Amazon. That's the autobiography that I wrote with my two brothers and my sister back in 2013. And because we hadn't got any convictions, because we were always told it would never get to court, no one would believe you, da-di-da-di-da-di-da, we felt that would never get justice. So our justice was writing that book. We weren't allowed to name people, just in case, yeah. But no publisher would touch it. So I paid for it to be written, I paid for it to be published, and then I gave it out to people. And that book was almost like my business card. It opened a lot of doors for me. So Theresa May read that book when she launched the inquiry, and she said it gave her a lot of insight as to why the inquiry was needed. Yeah. I'm not saying the inquiry was because of me. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it shows from 4 different people's perspectives, 2 girls and 2 boys, their different positions in the family home and what we all experience differently and collectively. And we felt that that brought us together, with my 2 half sisters as well, but they didn't want to take part in the book, which is fine. But there's 4 of us, and there's all my pictures in there as well from when I was a kid. There's a handful of pictures, and they're the only pictures that I've got. So that tells our story up until I was age 43. And then, as I said, I've got another 12 years of going through the criminal justice system and God knows what else to write about. But the other book is Breaking the Cycle, and that is my health and wellness book for victims and survivors that want to recover from trauma through holistic means, looking at the whole body and understanding how the brain reacts when you are abused, understanding what triggers do to the brain and the hormonal response, and how you can quieten all of that down by looking at what is causing it, getting help for that, and then changing the habits and behaviours so that you can live a peaceful life. So you're not always in this fight, flight, fearful kind of existence. Yeah. And so it looks at mindset. So it looks forwards as well as backwards, as well as in the present. It looks at nutrition. It looks at fitness, movement. It looks at posture and how you hold yourself. So it's it's a recovery book for aiding recovery, if you have got nothing else. But my 8-week course is based on that book now. And Yeah, really proud of what I have achieved, to be honest, but I don't often sit and think about it because I'm always looking to do the next thing. I'm always looking to say, right, what else can I do now to change stuff? And that is a byproduct of the upbringing as to I can't settle, I got to keep going,
All right.
which is not good. I need balance and I'm working on that.
So glad I jumped on this live. What a powerhouse you are, Chris.
Yeah, I'm
And
just
you
a normal person that's trying to do the best.
you got to tell us about the third book.
Oh, my third book is not that's so Parenting Without Tears. I haven't got a copy of it, but it's available on Amazon, just as a download. So what I did, there was a parenting coach, Chris Thiessen, who said that as a parent, you need to provide your child with these foundational things. Yeah. So I took his model and then I said, right, as an abused child, young person, I didn't have this, and this is how it's impacted me. So as a mother, a traumatized mother, I now need to do things differently. So it's parenting without tears. So as a mother, I didn't know. Well, I did know, but many people that have been abused don't know what it's like to be normal, whatever normal is, like loving, caring, nurturing, provide the basics for their child because they may be in the throes of addiction or mental health, for example. So they may not be able to provide their child with the basic foundations that that child needs. And if they can't do that, they're not breaking the cycle. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's just like, right, okay, as a parent, my friend Bev says every person should have parenting classes no matter what they've gone through, because then everyone starts off at the same level, don't they? Because then you know what you need to give your child. Yeah. You know that you can't go around hitting your child because that's abusive. Yeah. But some parents don't understand that. They think they can do that. Yeah. So it's about understanding that if you want to bring a child into this world, as a caregiver, as a parent, you need to provide these steps, these foundations. And if you don't, it doesn't make you a bad parent, but what it does is that you won't be fulfilling the needs of those children.
Yeah.
That's it, basic. But I did it from the point of view of being, because I didn't get that, this is how it impacted me.
What's the names of the other books again?
Through the Eyes of a Child, so that's the autobiography, and the Breaking the Cycle is the health and wellness book. And they're all available on Amazon under my name anyway. Or they can go, sorry.
Chris Tuck, yeah?
Yeah. Amazon, we don't earn any money for the charity if they buy the books from Amazon, but if they buy the books from the charity website, then we obviously get all of the money.
Say that again, just so we know how we can benefit.
If people buy it from Amazon, we don't really get a lot of money for the charity. But if they buy it from the website, the charity website, survivorsofabuse.org.uk, then all of the money goes to the charity. And I don't know whether you know, Curtis, but Bev and I, we've done presentations for Windsor and Maidenhead social care. And we're now doing one for Richmond and Kingston social care. So, you know, you have Social Care Week.
Right.
Bev and I are presenting again this year using our stories and our professional experiences. Because you're an independent social care person, aren't you? You told us on our podcast.
Yes, that I stopped doing that work. I mean, actually, at the moment, I've just started a new job as an assistant team manager, and but I was doing independent social work as well,
okay,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No worries.
Where was I? Tell us about your podcast.
Oh yeah, Breaking the Cycle, 2 Step Forwards. It's on YouTube. Just that, Breaking the Cycle. You can find it, and it's on all podcast platforms for audio.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just hope I've not offended anybody by being so blunt.
So the audience is about 10 seconds behind.
Okay.
They may or may not let you know. But interestingly, on this platform, the things that we talk about, you don't, if you don't want to be offended, don't come on here. It's not like
Okay.
TikTok is a bit of a crazy crowd. I do it here because people are. But look, I mean, this young lady here, Shania Ray, she's going to be on the show as well.
Hi, Shania.
Care Lever, she's got an interesting story. She's quite popular on TikTok. She's putting her story out there.
Brilliant.
And yeah, I think you'd probably be a breath of fresh air. And it would be probably good to, I'm trying to network people here. She's really.
We're always looking for guests on our podcast, Shania, so get in touch.
Come on now. Network, let me know, and then I'll point you.
No worries.
Someone saying you need to go to Baswa. It's not offensive at all. Phenomenal woman. Thank you, Chris. So inspirational. Give us social work students more of a drive to do well and try not to fail. Yes, this is what I'm talking about.
You know what? I do not believe that social care workers go into the profession to fail children. I don't believe that at all right? But we are failing children, and collectively we've got to try and change that. Why and how are we failing them, and what can we do different? That's what this is all about.
Perfect. You know what? I want to go on, and I'm trying to be disciplined, but what it means is that there has to be a part 2.
Yeah, okay, no worries. But just think of some. Sorry, my voice is going now. Think of some questions.
You mean for next time?
Yeah, from your students. Yeah, I'll answer anything.
Absolutely. We're going to bring you back on and just go hard on some of those tricky questions. I think your life story, your lived experience is really. It's important to get people's narratives as opposed to just talking from abstract theory.
Yeah.
That's how.
Yeah.
I spent the first 2 years of uni talking about theory.
Yeah.
But the only thing that meant anything to me and my colleagues was hearing people's life story.
Yeah. Same here. I always hear from people that have gone through horrific stuff, way worse than what I'm not minimizing what I've gone through because I understand what it's done to me, but horrific stuff. And there was just not been anyone there to protect them, and just being able to give them a voice, whether it's their own voice or through me sharing with their permission, then that's what this is all about for me.
Yeah. And this is it. Same here. This will be probably episode 149 on the Social Work Race podcast. Get yourselves on to Chris's podcast. That is, let me just get it here. Breaking the Cycle to Step Forwards.
Yeah.
That's where we learn, guys, is by listening to people's stories. Yeah, thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Shania. We've networked you to someone who's got a brilliant story and still going. You know what I love as well? I don't just want to hear stories where people have overcome. I want to hear how people are currently doing it.
Yeah.
That's as real as it gets.
Yeah.
So Shania is the one. Get her on there soon, maybe next week. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to finish.
You're welcome.
You've had a lot going on today. You've done your.
I have.
You just finished a podcast today.
Yeah, I've just done the peer-to-peer support group. Yeah, and I'm working on lots of different things. But that's how I like it. I don't like to not be busy.
Wow.
Yeah.
We can keep talking. I tell you what. Thank you for your time.
No worries. All right.
And guys, this will be on both our podcasts. This audio. Have a good night, everyone. It's bedtime for everybody. We're at that age where it's gone past 8 p.m. Thank you so much.
I don't know. All right then. Bye. Bye.